Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of the Bookum Nook Show. My name is Kyle Colley, and this is a special episode of Founders Talk Podcast, a podcast for founders to tell their stories, ideas, and visions of the future. This episode is brought to you by Bookum, the book community's new and best way to host dynamic online book clubs. Download the app and start your book club today at www.bookumapp.com. My guest today is the spectacular Stacy Spikes. Stacy is the author of Black Founders, The Hidden Power of Being an Outsider. Stacy is also the co-founder of MoviePass. MoviePass is a subscription-based movie ticketing service. Prior to MoviePass, Stacy worked at Motown Universal and was also the VP of marketing at Miramax. He has worked with everyone from Eddie Murphy to Stevie Wonder. Stacy is relentless, he's focused, he's caring, he is a disruptor, he is inspiring, he's a father, he's thought-provoking, and he's ultimately a movie buff. Stacy, welcome to the Founders Talk podcast.
Oh, thank you, man. That's a wonderful intro.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you today. I kind of want to, like I said, I want to start in modern times. There was a new documentary that just came out about MoviePass. So I'm interested to hear like your talk, how it went, what was the making of the documentary like, any cool stories from doing the documentary?
Yeah, so during COVID, when things were pretty quiet with movie theaters, I got some producers reached out to me and said, hey, we really want to tell the MoviePass story and we'd like to take it to Mark Wahlberg and HBO. And so I thought, okay, it's pretty neat. And so it went pretty quickly and we were able to lock that up. And then they brought on the director, Muta, who did an incredible job, in my opinion, of telling a very delicate story of two Black founders creating a company, disrupting Hollywood. And then company went into different hands and had a bad outcome. And then as you mentioned, me buying it back and relaunching it. So it's been a really cool experience to be able to have that story told. And it's neat. It's really, I've been in the movie industry for a long time, but I've never been the subject or the actor in one. So that's a first.
Yeah, there's this quote that people always say, it's the founder is the guardian of the company's soul. And just to hear you get the company back at the end was really important to me, just like listening to it, because it shows that it's still important. It's still needed, because even today, the movie-going experience is such a unique experience, no matter how you whether you stream or not. Just going to that popcorn feeling, getting the drinks, the movies, everything about it is just unique. And I love what you all do at MoviePass.
Thank you, man. Yeah, there's a lot of people don't know that, movie going is the #1 out-of-home entertainment activity in the world. And it is more people go to the movies than on a single film in 4 days than all people who go and attend all NFL games in an entire season. And so it's really something that's important to us, no matter what part of the globe you're in or culture. It gets people under different races, different religions, different cultural backgrounds who will all sit in the dark and watch, a movie unfold is an extraordinary and powerful thing. So I'm really happy about what we do for a living and how we make it easier for people to go to the movies.
It's that storytelling that just brings us to life and bring us to that moment. And speaking of stories, who were some Black founders or heroes growing up for you, and how did they shape your life?
Yeah, when I was coming up, I think I heavily looked up to, I like all kids, both music and a lot of the rappers. I looked up to Spike Lee. I looked up to Denzel, who was getting his acting groove on, and it was early. Gosh, and I think there were a lot of pioneers who were changing the game, like Quincy Jones. And when you looked at the publishing magnates like Johnson and Johnson Publishing and the Johnson family, and who created, Ebony and Jet and all of those back then, those were kind of our heroes. And a lot of the TV shows that we had, whether it was Good Times or the Jeffersons or so many shows that were like showing you the possibility of what life could be like, that all of that had a growing impact on me. And then you started seeing people like Oprah, and you started seeing, Michael Jordan, and you started seeing Mike Tyson, and people who were tops of fields just rocking it. And that really was inspiring to me. And then Rockefeller came on the scene, and you see Jay-Z grow, and you don't just see this artist that blips and goes. You see people who built entire industries around them. And that really was what was powerful to me.
No, I love that. And talk to me about films a little bit. Like, how did those play a role in your life? I know you talk about Blade Runner being something that was really pivotal, but what other films, or even that film, that really spoke to you growing up?
Yeah, I was a really bad comic book geek. I mean, I think a lot of people are, but I like collected comic books. I read sci-fi novels in my bedroom. My mother just moved out of, our childhood place where my old bed frame was still set up, and the bookcase, it still has Tom Swift novels. And I just used to read all of this sci-fi stuff. I still read sci-fi to this day. And when I saw Blade Runner, even more than Star Wars, when I saw Blade Runner, it just really impacted me in such a different way. It was a slow burning film. It wasn't like Star Wars where everything's shoot and run and da da da. It was like a film that took its time, and it spoke to me at a different level. And I remember distinctly knowing, I think I was 11 or 12, and I remember like, whatever that is, I want to work in that field for the rest of my life. It was so transformative that you could see cars flying. And, today we sit there and we talk to our phones. And back then, where Harrison Ford's character is talking to his TV and telling it to zoom in on a frame, or like, we do that and take it for granted. We have hover cars today. And it was just wild to see the future so clearly. It wasn't a pretty future. It was like, okay, you're going to have poverty. You're still going to have homelessness. You're still going to have weather problems, but you got to see, like, here's the future of it's, high tech, but low lives. These people had very, very high technology, but they also had low level existence. And the disparity between wealth and not, and robotics. And I was like, I'm there.
Blown away.
Like, take me.
Yeah, see, and that's what movies do. And I'm glad you talked about Harrison Ford, because in your book you do talk about your early moments of potentially, you tried out for acting a little bit, but they had you playing a lot of different, like, stereotypical roles. It reminded me almost identical to the movie American Fiction, like Erasure by Percival Everett.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that experience and getting into the acting side of things.
Well, so hip hop was huge, and you had a lot of the rappers who were crossing over. And so you had Dead Presidents, you had things like some of the Tupac films. And so you just had a lot of presence of rappers who were crossing over into the game. And so I was showing up. And so there was still this kind of hard gun carrying, thug life mentality to that game. You were either kid and play doing house party, or it was, thug life. And if you were black, and it was like, there was kind of like nothing, it felt like there was nothing in between. And everything I was going out on, I mean, I'm sure you're going to find this hard to believe, but I don't make an impressive thug. And and now or then, and I just couldn't pull it off, man. And so I'm going and I'm trying to do these auditions. I was like, this just isn't working for me. And I kind of threw in the towel and ended up working behind the scenes. And so I actually like it in a way, because you constantly can reinvent yourself and start over. And And so I think I ended up where I was supposed to be, but boy, it was thug life wasn't for me. I wasn't cut out for it.
Yeah, everyone's not built for it.
I wasn't convincing enough.
Not at all. Speaking of working behind the scenes, one of the people that you talk about a lot in your book is Clarence Avant. And I wanted to hear kind of like what you learned from him, like his influence, because he's like if you haven't seen it, I know you have, but I'm saying for others, there's a Netflix documentary that's called The Black Godfather. So I wanted to hear what you learned from him and his experiences.
So early on at Motown, I remember this dude, this tall, just looks out of place, but you knew when he walked in the building, and I didn't know his back history. Now you can look him up and you can literally see he was such a mover and a shaker in the civil rights movement, and he was a lawyer to everyone. And Clarence, we live near in the West Village and over near Washington Square Park, and when there are these red-tailed hawks, so there's pigeons all around. All of a sudden, you can tell when there's a hawk in the air because those pigeons are like, "Don't move, don't breathe." It was like you didn't know where Clarence was, but you knew he was in the building. There was something about this man that he had that kind of command of the world and space around him. And I think what was so mind-blowing to me was, they'll call it code switching sometimes, where, we can be together and be saying a bunch of stuff, and then someone of a lighter hue may walk into the room and we will suddenly change our tone and demeanor. Clarence didn't. And Clarence, you were kind of like, does he know why people are in this room? Like, because he's speaking quite freely. And Clarence just had and he was shockingly abrasively crystal clear. And he didn't mix words if you were an all black company or all white company. And he was unapologetically black. If you took James Brown, "I'm Black and I'm Proud," poured it into a lawyer, an entertainment lawyer, that's Clarence. And he was just like, God damn, what cloth did you get cut from? Like he just was that generation that we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. And yeah, go ahead. Yes, say something. Say it. I'm ready. Like he was from that world, and he was dynamic, and he just moved mountains. He was the Godfather. He moved everything.
That documentary is one of my favorites, and I hadn't previously known about Clarence Avant before then, but watching that documentary and seeing what he was able to do and the people that vouched for him. So even now I'm hearing your story too, just like all these unique, different people that were successful in their own right, saying, "No, this was the guy." It's just incredible.
Yeah. And anybody on the street wouldn't know who he is, but yet he's a kingmaker. And kingmakers are quite invisible, but the kings go and kiss their ring. And what is that they're not having people beat up, but what is it that makes? And there was something about his personality was very laser beam like, and it cut right through all. Other people, you'll go in a business meeting, "Well, Jim, I think we should do this. Well, Steve, we should do that. Well, Sally, we should do this." And you'll dance around. He will walk in the room like, "Look, I got 5 minutes. This is and wouldn't even sit down and like, this is how it's going to go. This is what's going to happen," and walk out of the room. And everybody's like, "Oh, okay." It was like that. He just had a power that is, rarely seen walking around the face of the earth.
Yeah, another person that's like that, and you talk about him in your book too, is Spike Lee. And you talk about working on the Jungle Fever album. Can you talk a little bit how a soundtrack albums work versus just doing normal LPs and all type of albums?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think anybody's actually ever asked me that question, Kyle. Thank you. So a regular album is the artist. So Lady Gaga has an album, right? It's her album, and she may have guests and people on it on her different tracks, but it's her album. A soundtrack is like a album that has no particular artist. It is literally a collection of different artists. And when you were a product manager like myself, soundtracks were very annoying because if I have an artist and that artist has a successful album, I'm going along with their career and I'm representing them going forward. When there's a soundtrack and the soundtrack's over, it's over. You don't have this artist who's doing this show or this performance next week or this the next year. And so that was the challenge about Spike liked working with Stevie Wonder and he liked working with certain artists, but he could, depending upon the format that fit the film, it would change. He could go into jazz, he could go into hip hop, he could go into Stevie Wonder, he could move around, and whatever Spike did, you were, it was one and done. And so that was often the annoying thing. But me working those soundtracks helped me get in the movie business because I started to learn how the soundtrack would set up the film. And when I ended up going to Sony after Motown, I did the first Bad Boys movie soundtrack, and we ended up having the number one single, the number one video, the number one soundtrack, and the number one movie all at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah, that's awesome. And speaking of just kind of like movies, soundtracks, and another cool thing about your story is you started the Urbanworld, and talk to us a little bit about creating film festivals, because now we know about TIFF and we know about Cannes and we know about Venice and obviously Sundance, but how did Urbanworld plant its position in the film festival market?
So I was an executive over at Miramax at the time, and there was Sundance, there was Cannes, there was a lot of what we call destination festivals. They, in and of their names themselves, describe where they are and they're a location, and they're often put on by, say, tourism boards or the local empowerment zone helps get those up and on their feet. And they're designed to drive traffic to those towns, and they're beach towns or ski towns in off-season time periods and things like that. So a lot of the major festivals, when you would go, there was not a lot of works by people of color. And you got to remember, we've got Arsenio Hall show, we've got Vibe magazine, we've got Source, we've got Right On, we've got hip hop, we've got Oprah, we got all of this stuff. And it's like, well, wait, where's our movies, right? Like, you can get them on video, and they were coming out direct to video, but it was like, but why aren't these titles in theaters? And so anyway, I went and I said, I said to the execs over at Sundance, I said, you guys should show more Black and brown films. And they're like, well, when things are good, we show them. And I said, according to who? And I said, you guys, there's a lot better content out there. And so I developed a very big resentment at those comments, and I thought they're wrong. And so I went to the Keith and Lynn, who were running Vibe magazine at the time, and I said, hey, I want to try and do something where we create our own Cannes Film Festival. And they were like, what do you have in mind? I said, look, you've got the Vibe Music Seminar. Let's run a test. I'll show a film. If it goes well, you be my first sponsor for a film festival that happens in concert with your music conference. So back then you had Vibe Music Seminar, Jack the Rapper, How Can I Be Down, CMJ conference. You had all of these conferences and festivals and our music festivals and conferences. And so we ran a test and we showed Set It Off, the Queen Latifah. And cats lost their mind. And then so the next year we launched Urbanworld. Opening night was Hoodlum with Bill Duke. Closing night was Soul Food.
Okay.
And then we premiered How Stella Got Her Groove Back and Original Kings of Comedy, and we just took off. And we did our 27th year last year. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now we're talking about marketing and getting all this, because there's a lot of leverage that has to come through. Like, speaking of like being a VP of marketing at Miramax, what were some of those key marketing lessons that helped you set the foundation for MoviePass?
There's a lot of noise, and you have to learn how to get your message so tight that it cuts through the noise, right? And we use the term, where's the signal in the noise? And so a scream breaks through the noise. It goes up several decibel above the hum, and people will stop, or even a baby crying, or what someone says, like, hey, you know. And so what you're doing in a media environment is you need to cut through the noise. You can do it with silence. If you've ever seen a monk walking out handing out cards, right? Or you can scream. And I'll never forget the baddest commercial ever. And you can look it up. I'm sure it's somewhere on YouTube. So it's MTV days. And if you knew the blocks, you hear MTV, you will see it here first. And it's like sound. And it's just a wall of constant sounds. Music video, MTV News, music video. So Ice Cube did this commercial. Commercial is completely silent. And what it is there's a kid laying on a table, and he's lying with these headphones on, and we follow the cord. And then Ice Cube's got this big hypodermic needle, and he puts it in at the end of the IV, and he squeezes it, and it's got this very bright yellow, looks like it's plutonium, that goes through this thing, and it goes up the table, and we see it go into the headphones, and then the kid's lying with his eyes closed and his eyes just open, and it's a totally silent commercial. And what was great was what you would do is you would use MTV as a radio in your house. So you would be playing MTV, and you could be doing the laundry or doing the dishes or doing whatever, and MTV's on. Well, what they've done is they use a silent commercial because you thought something happened to your television. So you would go, hey, and you walk because it's silent. Work like a charm. Yep. And so again, you figure out what environment you're in and how do you break the plane of that. Is it silence? Is it noise? Is it a different type of noise? Is it a different type of silence? What is the messaging? Get to the point. Be very precise about it. And I just found commercials in like Apple's 1984 commercial that says, this year, 1984 won't be like 1984. They didn't talk about computers. And you just see this woman, and she's running, and she throws the anvil, and you're like, what is that? Right? Cuts through the noise. And those spots. So there's always been something so fascinating to me about being able to cut through the noise with marketing. I love reading the books and the great campaigns and the ads. And I'm just a really big fan of that as an art form. How now in a digital age, and then we're coming into an AI age, like how you break through the noise constantly through those mediums.
And then it was a Super Bowl commercial too, so it even adds even more gravitas to that
Oh yeah.
the 1984 one. Uh,
Yep.
yeah, talk to me like how did you get some of those early users to believe in MoviePass? Because it still is a very disruptive idea to how people think about movie going experience.
Yeah, I'd love to say we were really brilliant and super smart, but in my opinion, I felt cinema was late to the subscription game. And what was happening was all businesses were kind of a pay-per-view business. Your newspapers and things like that were subscription and circulation, but everybody else was you pay, you play, you pay, you watch, you pay, you listen, and that's all they were. So then you saw Netflix and Spotify and Pandora and Hulu, and these things off on the horizon, and they were pay once and you get this, unlocked walled garden of endless amount of stuff you can have for a ridiculous price. And I kept thinking, could that work for the movie industry? And so the economics were everybody was playing in Netflix and Spotify. They were playing in a $10 range. And I always thought if you're $20, $30, can you get, because I remember a single being either 99 cents
Yep.
and $10 a month is getting me 10 of those. If you get the value at 20 or $30 and I can get 2 to 3 movies a month, right? It was, is there a way, is there a there? And so it wasn't, I thought it was just like you need to look around you and see how things are changing. And we just saw that as a change. And then the hard part was how do you administer it when how do you build something across all theaters and all studios? Because us as consumers, I don't care if it's Disney or I don't care if it's AMC or I don't care if it's Regal. I just go, I want to see that. It's playing this far apart from me at this time. I'm not thinking I'll go to Regal as much as I'll go to AMC. It's just what time is it and which is closest to me. And that's the thing that when I went and did that, it made it so that how can we make a service that allows people to do that automatically and just go and don't have to think about it. And so it seems revolutionary, but to us, we were just trying to reduce friction about the movie going experience.
Yeah, and your entrepreneur. Speaking of how you're just the way you're talking, your entrepreneur's story wasn't like that. The myth of like an overnight success. The moment you drop it, everybody showed up. What kept you hungry and locked in as a founder?
I don't know, man. Look, first, I think you have to build something you love and you have deep curiosity about, and you become obsessed. So, like, a we were like, you need to make sure the transaction from beginning to end can happen in the app in less than 60 seconds, and it needs to be done with your thumb.
Yep.
So like, and you need to be walking down the streets of New York. So your buttons need to be a certain size. I want to use one hand because I have a bag in the other. And like telling people, engineers, that that was what we needed to achieve. That's an example of what we were trying to do.
Yep. There's this quote that Damon Johns had said in the documentary about Black founders. Like he said, when you go to an investor, like what do you have to ask them? What do they want out of it, right? Not just like just not how I need this money or this, but what do they truly want out of the company as well? Well, what other questions have you found to be like helpful questions founders should ask their investors for healthy relationships since you've been through a lot of that?
Yeah, so is the investment strategic, which means they may be giving you cash, but there is some kind of alignment they want between their business and your business? Or are they just cash? They want to see a return on investment. And Damon John was asking, and his question was more about what's the fine print? If I can't succeed at what I'm doing in that time frame, what's the consequences for that? And what he was saying was at time, minority founders may not get access to capital, so they may take terms that others will push back from and don't have to deal with. And so that's what he was trying to talk about in the movie. And what you take or what you don't take has a lot to do with where you are in your life cycle, how much air supply you have left. And so it's good to know and look for the fine print. What happens if this doesn't go the way they want? Some investors want standard terms. Some, they're out there doing what's called loan to own. They loan you money knowing you can't pay it back so that they can get your company. There's people that have nicknames called vulture capitalists. They only do distressed companies. They'll do high interest loans or high return loans that they just cannot pay back. And they're looking at it like, what are we going to cut up and sell? Because we know you're not going to give us our money back. So we're going to chop this thing up and sell the tires and sell the bumper and sell the headlights and all of the other stuff. So his question was more, what's the downside? What happens if this isn't working out the way you want it? Are you patient capital? Are you impatient capital? Those are the things you want to know.
Yeah. And talk to us, like, bring us back to that moment of just like, because I think it was in 48 hours, you had over something like 100,000 plus users. Like, talk to us about when your company fully hits, because I'm sure you definitely as a founder have thought, like, imagine when we get this to everybody. You're in that moment where like a lot of people are adapting it, a lot of people are using it. Bring us into that moment as a founder. What's going through your head and what are you thinking there?
It was crazy. So the buyers wanted three things: us to go public, us to bump up 100,000 subs, and us to drop the price to $10. There were three things, $9.90, $9.95. And we thought, okay, the $10 price point will move it up in speed of growth, but we thought maybe it would take 3 to 6 months for that 100,000 to hit. And it happened in 48 hours. And 48 hours is surreal. Like 48 hours, you think, okay, I go to bed twice in there. So that's 16 hours out of that 48. So I'm at 32 and I'm going to eat lunch and do some other things. So when you really think about it, your waking hours is not that. Normally I go to work for 8 and then I got another 8 that I'm not, because you got 4 8s in there. And so really in 2 working cycles, 2 days, 2 working cycles, you add 100,000 subs. You add the equivalent of 15 million in top line revenue in 2 days. It was crazy. And so the phone lines are going down, the lights are all blinking, beep, 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 beep. What happened? And it just took off. I want mine, I want mine, I want mine. And we had to try and slow things down, but it was crazy. So, but yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, and so then you have kind of your Steve Jobs moment where you get kicked out of your own company that you started. What are you doing during that, like that year period or up until when you rebuy? And then also what inspired you to say, I want to go get this company. I want to do it right this time. Like what pushed you during in those moments too?
I went and started another company. After I licked my wounds for a bit, I went and started something else. I had curiosity around AI and and facial recognition and things like that. And I went and started another company. And then during the documentary shooting, they mentioned that the producers actually mentioned to me that MoviePass had not sold in an auction that had happened during the summer. And I think it was because in the middle of COVID, people were like, yeah, I'm not going to buy something that has to do with movie theaters. But I still believe we were all going to go back to the movies the minute COVID was over. It couldn't last forever. And I looked at the data from the 1918 Spanish flu, which had devastating consequences similar. And same thing, people went back to the movies. And a lot of the theater, a lot of the studios we know today, Warner Brothers and Disney and all of them were born in that time period. And so I knew people were going to go back to the movies, and then went back and made a bid to get the company back.
Yeah. And I guess a lot of it also, and this is just me kind of thinking, when there's not a lot of great movies coming out, like how do you kind of keep people excited about MoviePass? Because I know sometimes even in general, like if it's not a blockbuster summer, you like I guess last summer was great because you had Barbie and Oppenheimer and all that. But in those moments, how do you kind of keep people excited about MoviePass as a subscriber?
I think you kind of don't, when the fish come, you put your poles in the water. When the fish aren't biting, you go fix your fishing rod and get your hooks ready and get everything back in shape. And then when they start biting, so I think you don't, because you can't control the content flow. So you just wait till the tide is high.
Yep.
And so when the tide's high and you have seasonality, so you're going to have summer and Christmas, which are your two biggest seasons, your best content's going to be there. So we're, signing up people in 3 months of the summer and signing up people between, kind of almost 4 months. You got Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and then Oscars. Yep. So that window, and those are your two peaks and valleys, and you just stick to it, and you stay focused, and in between those peaks and valleys, you sharpen your message. How are we going to speak to them this quarter? What technologies are new? Is there, the Kendrick Lamar track is dope, we should cut that in. So you're constantly recreating yourself all the time between those twin peaks, and that's how we look at it in our day-to-day business.
Yeah, I want to shift a little bit into your writing process. Like, what was it like writing this book? And I also want to just say thank you, because so often we have Black founders that have created big companies that have never written books. They might have done a podcast here or interview there, but I think we definitely need more stories like this, where it's just not so much, hey, this is lesson here, but it's like you're just giving your honest life story, the biography, what you went through. And I really think those stories are really helpful for founders in the trenches that are building. So yeah, talk to us a little bit about your writing process.
Like you said, I when I was a kid, there weren't Black founder books, even though there were some Black-owned businesses. You didn't have a book from Bob Johnson. You didn't have a book from Oprah. You didn't have a book, but Richard Branson had a book. David Geffen had a book. The ones I was reading in high school was Branson, Geffen. There was Lou Wasserman, who it was The Last Mogul. He was headed up Universal, discovered Steven Spielberg. There was the guy who discovered Jimi Hendrix, and he did, Live at the Fillmore. He did Fillmore East and Fillmore West. There was Sam Spiegel, who was the executive producer of Lawrence of Arabia.
Okay.
And those were the books, right? Those were the ones. And those were the ones I was reading. And it gave me a map of how people broke into the industry. Like a lot of the stuff about me getting my first gigs in Hollywood, I learned from David Geffen's book, because he was in the CAA mailroom, learned about working your way up and how he was first there and last to leave. And I learned how to go pick up the boss's newspaper and drop it off at the office every day and stuff like that, be seen. And when they need something, somebody says, I need this, you say, I got it, and you go get it, you be seen, and you be, what do you do? What department are you in? Hire this kid, right? It was about the hustle. And I learned that from those books, and also the the Steve Jobs book, and Walter Isaacson's done a bunch of these books.
Yep.
He just dropped the Elon Musk book, and I read Billie Jean King, and like, so I tried to read every biography. I still do. I love reading biographies, and I felt I'd never seen a Black tech book. I'd never seen a person of color talk about being inside of technology. And there are people who have been very successful. And like you said, they didn't leave their crumbs behind. And I think everybody should.
Yeah, I think we for sure, you have Reginald Lewis's book. That's like a big one. But again, to your point, there's just not enough of those. So like when I saw your book, I was like, okay, I got to get this. And then you also think about what's his name, Jerry Weintraub with his book, or Michael Vitz with his book. So you have these stories starting to come out. I think it really helps. I kind of want to just wrap up here, and we can kind of close here. Like, what kind of stories do you hope to see more of? Could be film or in the book industry. Like, what kind of stories would you like to see?
Yeah, I definitely want to see. I think film has really advanced, that we've really broken out of stereotypes and casting. Like it used to be, we were casting. So I really think we broke, in my lifetime, I've never thought we'd see characters like Denzel's gonna head up Gladiator 2, and it's okay, who can command the box office, put them in those roles, rather than okay, put white people in and who's supporting cast. So that's huge, seeing where we've gone from Sidney Poitier to Denzel and others, and seeing women, some of the women's roles, and seeing whether it's like Viola out there just doing her thing, just smashing it. Viola is like runs every, you would think Viola's just CEO of everything out
Right.
there in the world. And it just looks natural on her, whether she's in Hunger Games, or she's in what was it? Not Picket Fences, with Denzel.
Oh yeah,
Um,
just fences.
Fences,
Yep.
Fences. Man, that scene when she's like, just giving it to Denzel, and like, I was there for you. I was under you. I was, whew. It's so beautiful to see, and to see Black love and see Black stories. Like I remember sitting in the theater watching Moonlight, and here is a Black gay love story between two men, told beautifully. And I thought, wow, look at this. It wasn't voyeuristic. It wasn't prison rape. It was a beautiful love story between two men, and wasn't even a Brokeback Mountain. It was better than that. It just, so I was really, you can see that stuff's changed so much when you see Mahershala Ali, and the stuff that he's getting to play and do. And you see I forgot the name of the show, where it's the Apple show, and it's in the future, and he's dying, and he plays both characters of, they clone his body, and he's going to, but that's magnificent. It's a masterpiece. And so I think that, we've gotten to do and go places, and I'm grateful that Urbanworld and things like that have been able to play a role in it. And I'm excited to see what we do next. I love that we can go anywhere and do anything now. Nothing feels out of place, where it used to be, well, why can't we play the president? Or why can't we be the lead? Or what now you can have an all Black film, and it feels like it's mainstream. You can
Yep.
have a Kevin Hart film with an all Black family, and years ago you would have felt like you were watching a Steve Martin film, and now it can be a Kevin Hart film, and that is middle America. right? Where it used to be, if it was an all black cast, it's Sidney Poitier and Richard Pryor, and you got people cooning and, you know, doing whatever. And now you can, Kevin Hart can just, it's like, yeah, that's just normal. And that's what's beautiful and shows how far we've come.
Yeah, you get like a Black Panther where it's just a crazy set in the middle of, you know, Africa. It's just it's an insane film.
Yep.
The way I like to end this podcast is what should be in a founder's toolkit, and also what should be for you specifically, what should be in a outsider's toolkit, or if someone wants to break into the industry, what should be in their toolkit?
What should be in a founder's toolkit is you have to fall in love with the word no. You have to use no like cocoa butter. You got to just start to. B. Smith has a quote: "You have to stand on a mountain of no's to reach your yes." No's aren't no's. What no's are is you sharpening your blade on, yeah, but well, if you had, and if you could get, and all you're doing is making that, and then you get to that piece of paper and you just go, because all those no's sharpen that blade to, it cuts the paper like nothing. And so you, a lot of times people take no's personally. They think it's about them. They make it about their ego. You have to have patience and perseverance, which means no isn't no. And the other thing I would add in the toolkit is it needs to be that you have to not personalize the journey. You have to understand that the hero's journey is supposed to be hard. It's making the kind of change that you're thinking in your mind seems like a very good and simple idea, but you have incumbents who are sitting there making money the way it's made now, and they don't want that to change. And you come along and you go, well, why are you guys doing it that way? We should just make cars electric. And people don't like you to change their business model. So you have to understand it's not personal, but you're taking food off their plate. And they, when for the first time, I remember we were running some ads and stuff, and we were showing in our social feed a lot of negative comments, and I used the MoviePass product and it sucked, and it did. We ended up finding out that a theater chain, very big theater chain that will remain nameless, hired a PR firm to go in and do bad reviews on our product. And at first you're like, well, and then you realize, oh, the game has changed, right? And enemies did that all the time. One of the great books, if you ever want to read it, is Sam Walton's book.
Made in America.
And he talks about going across the street to Kmart or Target, and he would walk in there and put on little disguises and go write down all the prices and walk back across the street to his and lower all the prices and say, we have the cheapest prices in town. And but that's what business is like. Everybody's fighting for their survival. What would I say for the outsider? Your outsideness is your advantage. You have a unique point of view from a group of people you represent, whether you're Android users, whether you're instead of Windows, you're Google, using Google software, whether you are, and trust the power of being a small, passionate group. And then people glob onto the vision that that group has. And you set a very high goal. When Google said, we want to make all the world's information and data accessible and free, this is stupid. That's just crazy. What are you talking about? But people liked, and remember their motto was do no harm, you know.
Of course.
Those are very simple brand ethos. Just do it. Um, you know, there's nothing like Heinz. Um, uh, Avis, proud to be #2. Like, there's just like these brand ideas that you find your place in the ecosystem and you represent it strongly. And people love an underdog. People love new. They love different. There's a point at which someone will want to challenge MoviePass in this space. And then how do you stay cutting edge, and you're the old guy on the hill and they're coming to take your lunch and they're all 20 years old and you got to learn how to compete, you know. So those are kind of the two things that I would say. They're very long answers, but there you go.
No, well said. Thank you so much, Stacy, just for, like you said, telling us about the world and seeing your vision and talk about MoviePass and just your experience. You have a wealth of information, knowledge, and it's really been a pleasure. Let us know how we can support anything that's coming up in your world or where we can find you on the internet.
We are on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I would say definitely check out the book if you have any entrepreneurial prowess, and sometimes entrepreneurialness can happen even inside companies, but how to move, you know, innovation and make change. And if you like it, definitely post about it, tell other people. We want to make sure that we do this in the movie industry. We go and we buy tickets to Black films because we want the studios to know that you should support these films. And so I would say if you feel it's the right thing, support the book, write reviews about it, tell your friends, give it as a gift to that young entrepreneur out there in your life that's trying to make it, because it's got a lot of how-tos in there. And everybody stay up and stay strong.
Yeah, we'll make sure to put in the show notes. We'll share about it. Thank you so much again. And like I said, even though it says Black founders, this book is really for everybody. Like, it is truly an entrepreneurial story, and you'll get a lot of value out of it. So, Stacy, thank you so much again for being on the Founders Talk podcast. It was our pleasure.
Kyle, thank you so much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Appreciate you.